folks. Welcome to McFarland's Corner. I'm Michael McFarland, your host and the Lake Fork Guide. Today we are going to be discussing the topic of spawning bass. We are going to cover when, where, and how they spawn. We're going to cover some techniques for how to catch them. And we're also going to cover proper handling techniques for handling the fish this time of year. Before we do, let's, as always, let's get into McFarland's journal. We didn't do a corner last week for good reason. MLF was here and the weather and nada. So we're going to give you the journal for the past 2 weeks, which is March 9th through the 14th and March 16th through the 21st. Fishing's really been good. It's not hot yet. The MLF sure made it look that way, at least for day one. 80 something pounds out of one tiny little spot is incredible. Mark Daniels leading the pack with 80 pounds worth of bass. They really caught him well that first day. And we'll kind of briefly talk about what and why they did. The timing was perfect, just absolutely perfect. But the last 2 weeks, basically, fishing's been pretty good. We've been catching a big fish almost every day. There's been a day or two where we've had multiple big fish and lost a few. We haven't really completed that giant sack yet, which I'm looking for. One of these days, we're going to put 5 or more big ones in the boat, and that's going to be an awesome day. So I don't want to, exaggerate you and tell you that it's awesome fishing, but we are catching them. And it's been getting better and better. The numbers are better and better each day. Basically, as you've seen, we're keeping track of the water temperatures. We've also been increasing those water temperature range. For example, March 9th, the water temperature was 54.4 in the main lake. March 16th, a week later, Monday, this past Monday, it was 57.6. We did some good fluctuation in that week. It was, I believe, 62.2 was the highest I've seen the main lake get so far. And that was just brief, but that was when the pros were here during the week of the MLF. Pretty good stable conditions that ended, of course, with some change. They had a cold front come in and the flooding rain began. And you looked at their statistics even kind of changed. They were mostly fishing for that very first wave of bass that came in very exclusive areas only, very minimum areas, in those first areas that warm up in the northern end of the lake. But again, until probably the last 3 to 5 days, everything was really good around here. It's flooded now, and the lake is overpooled considerably. Gates are open, more rain coming. The water clarity has changed. Some of the areas I'm fishing are still good. Kind of losing the Lake Fork green that I just love. But it's still good. It's not real bad. Full lake. Let's go ahead and finish. Let's get into how are we catching the fish? How is McFarland Fishing catching the fish? All right. The first thing really has been the jig, the football jig. What am I actually throwing this on? First thing is, I promise you, do not throw a jig in Lake Fork in anything less than 20 pounds. So the first thing is I'm throwing it on 20-pound fluorocarbon. I'm using a 73 gear ratio Daiwa Tatula. So a high-speed gear ratio, and I'm throwing this on a real-time rod Bushido MB 7'3", 1225, which is like a 5-power. Okay, MB 7'3", 1225 with the added McFarland signatures. Okay, the McFarland signatures in general are the microwave guide system with a titanium tip, and on the full handles, we put the shrink. Okay. This does not slip when it gets wet whatsoever, period. It also keeps that cork clean. So if you ever do want to take that off and have the rod clean and maybe resell the rod or whatever. But I love this stuff. It also helps the rod float. If you kick it in the water, it's going to give you a little extra time to get it before it really does start sinking. But anyways, that's what I'm throwing the jig rod on. 20-pound test fluorocarbon. It's a 3/4 ounce Santone football jig. I rig it up with a Rage Craw lobster, a green pumpkin lobster. And the way that I actually fish it is I drag it, okay? But you have to remember that the more you drag a bait in Lake Fork, the more you get stuck in junk, all right? And it's not the fact of getting stuck that's all that bad. It makes for a bad presentation. So you have to kind of have a loose, clunkety drag is what I call it. As you're pulling that bait and you feel it begin to have contact with stuff, you have to unengage. You have to have looseness. And you kind of have to, like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time, you have to kind of have the bait clunking and then pull that clunking, that looseness, so that it has a chance to bounce up and over through things. It has a chance to fall down in the brush and then loosely bang itself back out of the brush. That is a challenge. It is an art. Even when you get good at doing that, you're still going to get stuck in Lake Fork. You're going to pull up on a nasty spot and throw the jig for 15 minutes and maybe catch some fish and be in and out of the junk, and you're really good at loose clunking and disconnection, what I call it, so you get the bait out of there, and then all of a sudden you're going to have 20 minutes of doing nothing but getting stuck. Sometimes you're just going through little V's. There's nothing you can do about it. The law of gravity takes over. But in general, that's the way I fish it. I do like to drag it uphill. If I get in a good shell bed that doesn't have a lot of wood, I will most definitely just drag it, make it clunk and bang through those shells. You'll feel it, literally, ka-thunk, 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 ka-thunk. That's my favorite way to fish the jig. Occasionally we will stroke it, but right now it's just been dragging it across the shells. Shallow shells are very fine. It's more of a rattle da-da-da-da-da instead of a ka-thunk, but that's what we do with the football jig. All right, caught some fish this week in the rain on the chatterbait. I expect that bite to really come into play. Probably should have already been running it a little bit more. As we talk about the spawning fish tonight, the topic, you'll see a little more what I mean when I make this quick statement. But there's more fish to come, lots more waves of fish to come in. And as those fish start coming in, I will get off of the high percentage location and start running places, start running more secondary points and banks that are now loaded up with the bigger fish. And there's no better bait than a chatterbait, great search bait. I throw the jackhammer. The evergreen jackhammer is absolutely my favorite now. It just makes a difference. The 3/8 ounce is what I throw. And I am actually using the Lake Fork lures, Live Magic Shad 4.5-inch trailer. We're doing just straight white on white here. The water's not that dirty where I'm fishing. I mean, it is. It dirtied up and changed, so I still like the white on white. But if you got some dirty water, I might throw more of a white and chartreuse. But this right here basically is a killer of big fish. The chatterbait will catch these big pre-staging females in these pre-staging locations, which I'm going to elaborate a little bit more in the spawning topic. So we're still in the journal, guys. I'm telling you actually this journal, a little more detail than the daily rundown. On this chatterbait, I'm throwing 20-pound monofilament. I want a little bit of stretch in it. So when they come out and suck that in, I'm not pulling it out of the mouth when we sweep or set the hook. I throw this on a Bushido real-time rod, FS 7'8", 1225. Again, it's basically like a 5-power. This has a little more tip. It's a little fast tip. It's a very strong, powerful rod that can boat flip a 10-pounder, honestly. If you need it to, you can boat flip a 10-pounder. I throw this with a little lower gear ratio, 6'3", Tatula 150, but 20-pound once again. You very rarely hear me talk about anything lower than 20-pound when I'm targeting big fish on Lake Fork. I don't want my heart broke or yours. The Texas Rig Chopstick, real simple. Man, there's not a whole lot to this bait. When we are running this, we're just pulling up on the points, the secondary points, and going through some of the expected spawning areas, and just tossing it, chucking it, fishing it real slow, sometimes swimming it back to the boat a little bit, throwing it up into the pockets and let it sit, kind of hop it through the pockets in the shallowness. Once it's offshore a little bit, swim it back to the boat. The chopstick, B&M chopstick, is real easy to use. I'm throwing this on 15-pound fluorocarbon once again. I'm back to the sinking line, the fluorocarbon. I'm throwing this on a real-time Bushido 7'3" MB 1020. This is a little lighter rod. This is what I would call more into the finesse fishing for the bass when they're finicking. I've gone down to a little bit lighter line. That's the lightest you're ever going to see me go. And every time we set the hook and I see a big fish on this, I cringe. There's so much wood and so much things that you can lose the fish in. But that 15-pound will hold it. If you're always checking your knots and keeping fresh, good line, it will hold. And we do land some really big fish fishing the V&M chopstick. Best colors for me really have been the Texas Smoke and or Okeechobee Craw. But that's how we're fishing that. Combination of kind of bouncing around between these high percentage spots, some just bank running, secondary point fishing, etc., is how we've been really putting this together. I know everybody's been kind of commenting and wanting this part of the lesson. We're still in the journal, so this isn't really a lesson. This is just more detail on how McFarland Fishing is catching the fish. But let's talk about it. Product of the week. The time is here. The shad have finally come up in. I've literally watched this migration from them being way offshore to coming in, getting on the front legs of main lake points, and now finally cresting and coming up onto those places, the ridges and the shallow places that we expect to see them. When that happens, in all of my live fishing, literally, I have never found a bait until last year that has just given me the most confidence that it's like a secret in the back pocket. I know it sounds silly, but I know that if I fish these baits during this next couple of months, I'm going to always catch fish. I don't necessarily mean the big fish, but often it is the big fish on fork. And so the product of the week is going to be the M-Pack Shad. And what that is that's Mark Pack. M-Pack Shad in the 5-inch and the 7-inch. Okay. Before I tell you how I fish it, I'm going to tell you just a few favorite colors. I really like the Green Pumpkin Magic, the Green Pumpkin Magic Red. I like the Houdini. I absolutely love the Disco Green, and of course, when the water gets dirty, the Chartreuse Pepper. I keep it pretty simple from there. I do mix up and throw both sizes, and here's how I do it. The full size is thrown on a Carolina rig. All right, the rod that I choose is an FS. It's a real-time rod Bushido, FS 7'8", 1225. It's got a nice tip to it. I am basically spooling that up with 25-pound big game. This takes a lot of beating, all right? You'll understand in a minute. So I want to change that as often as possible. It's cheap line. I can change it every day. But I put heavy main line, 25-pound main line. I'm going to put a bobber stopper, okay? Then I'm going to put a 1-ounce sliding egg weight. I'm going to put a bead, not a glass bead because you'll shatter it. Sometimes I shatter these ones. I'm going to tie a double San Diego jam knot. I've got to have this be a big, nasty knot because in essence, we're going to snap this bait hard like a jerk bait. I typically want about 4 feet of leader. I want about 4 feet of leader. This is a little shorter leader, but I like that 3 and 4 foot leader. I'll even go 5 foot leader if I really want this bait to have more suspending time as I jerk it, more movement, more glide. All right, so I'm going to set this up now. 25-pound big game main line. The leader, 20-pound fluorocarbon with a 5-aught offset hook. I'm going to Texas rig this bait, and I do not want it exposed. Okay, I don't want the hook sticking out. The whole object is I'm going to test this in the water before I start fishing with it. I'm going to pull it next to the side of the boat. If this bait twirls, it's no good. I need it to glide. I need it to be real sleek and glide. Because I'm going to take this and I'm going to chuck it up into that shallow shell-bedded reef. And I'm going to snap it like a jerk bait. Okay? Then I'm going to reel down and I'm going to lift up easy like it was a weightless jerk bait and look for it. Where's the bait? Once I found the bait again, I snap it again very aggressively. I have to check this knot quite often because this area takes a beating. In fact, I have a lot of lead. You can see on the backside of that lead how much of a beating it takes when it gets flattened at the end of the day fishing. So we're literally working the old ball and chain like a jerk bait, okay, with the impact shad. Awesome rig right there to catch the big ones. This rig caught my biggest sack last year, 35 plus pounds. We had 12 big fish that day, all over 5 pounds, with a big fish of 9.2, if I remember correctly. One heck of a day with the impact shad and what guys would call the old ball and chain. Now, kind of leaning towards my more favorite, and I'm going to explain why here, is what I like to call the finesse Carolina rig. A lot of guys would call this a chicken rig, but because of the way that I actually fish it, the big rig, by the way, is made for the 7-inch bait. The finesse rig is made for the 5-inch bait. That's the way I use them. On the finesse rig, I basically am doing the same exact thing, same concept, but what I've gone down to is a lighter rod and lighter line. All right, this is a MB 7'3", 10-20, so it's gone like from a 5 power to a 4 power. I'm putting 15-pound main line and 12-pound leader. I do this when the fishing's really finicky. I do this when we just want to catch fish. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with 2 to 5 pounders. In many places, some of you are laughing. You'll have 2 to 5 pounders all day long. On fork, I want the 8s, 9s, 10s, or bigger if we can. But sometimes we just want to go catch. Sometimes they even are caught right here on this rig, the big ones. But anyways, this is just in essence a finesse version of what I just taught you in the big Carolina rig. I typically do not want any more than 2 feet a leader on this. I go down to 15-pound main line. I do the same rigging, okay? Bobber stopper, egg sinker, bead, double jam knot, 18 inches to 2 feet of lighter 12-pound test. And I choose this over drop shotting. This is my way of finesse fishing lake fork. Last year, as I said, I went 6 straight weeks where I fished 4 spots. Just 4 spots. The same 4 spots. The same rig. And I went through 200 of these baits. It was incredible. I've never had a pattern stay the same for so long. 2 weeks is a great pattern. 6 weeks, unbelievable. I always carry a marker, orange and chartreuse. And these days I'm getting into the spray. The spray seems to do a little bit better on the definition that it has. When you put it in the water, it really pops, whereas the pin gets the chartreuse or the orange look. But I'm really liking this spray. Hang over the side of the boat. It's not messy. It's working really good. And I do spray those tails quite often. Product of the week, impact shad. The spawn. Man, this is everybody's time of year. They love it. They just love it. Fishing gets easier. I'm just going to kind of reminisce a little bit before I start to talk to you about when, where, and how they spawn. I'm also going to give you some great techniques on how to catch them, both sight fishing, blind fishing, and even just fishing for the stage females. But hindsight, bass fishing, going back even to when we didn't know what we know today, we didn't have the equipment we have today. Springtime. Springtime was when things started to change and everything begins to warm up in essence, and we start to see the days grow longer. To me, that is spring. I remember as a kid hardly knowing anything about bass fishing, and yet we knew that soon the shallow waters were going to fill up and the bass were going to be easier to catch. We were going to be able to see them, and instead of the clear water being empty like it was all winter, we'd see the bass, and here they came back, and And as kids, even we call it the bass are running. There's a run. Well, what was that? Well, that was the spawn. That was the fish coming back, yes, from offshore, from their deep winterized places, their lethargic places, coming back to the shallow waters to spawn. Really unique as a kid, didn't know what I know today. And today I'd like to share with you what I see and why I look at the spawn the way I look at it. First of all, Mother Nature is really unique. So everything I tell you is not 100%. Mother Nature breaks their own rules. Mother Nature sometimes will have fish on beds even in July, just a few more, and it's to extend and ensure their survival. So most of what I'm telling you is good theory. It's from lifetime of experience. It's from studies. It's from ecologist information that I've gathered, and a very seasoned opinion that I'm going to express. But the first thing is when. What time of year does this occur? What time of year does this spawn occur? It changes so much that there's a couple things that I'm going to talk about that are really, really, really important to help you recognize. In 2016, there was fish on beds in January. This year, the first wave came up in March. Perfect for the MLF anglers. Perfect. It was a small amount of a small wave of fish. The first wave usually is small in a limited amount of the lake. They beat it up, and then in essence, fishing didn't get tough. They run out of fish. They caught them. They caught that small wave in those small little amounts of water. It wasn't lake-wide, or they'd continue to beat down those fish. So, but when does it happen? It generally happens in early spring when the water temperatures reach 58 to 60 degrees. Okay, when you see that water parameter get up to 58, upper 50s, lower 60s, there's typically some fish trying to look and or planning on spawning largemouth bass. Okay, most of your northern ends of the lakes where it gets shallow, there's more shallow backwater. The flats that warm up first, they've got junk in them, they've got debris. They're maybe sheltered from big north winds, so your northern coast, they're going to warm up first. That shallowness up in north, that's where, again, majority of the MLF anglers found all these bedfish. That your northern end of the lake, it's going to warm up first. So I kind of look at Lake Fork as 3 stages. In other words, we have the first wave of fish usually happens up north end. Then the middle of the lake has a wave of fish or so, or 2 or 3. And then your basin has the latter wave. And that's just a water warming. The fish are going to spawn according to water temperatures, and the eggs incubate according to water temperatures. When the eggs are ready, the female dumps them. Okay? So remember, 3 levels, 3 platforms of Lake Fork. That doesn't mean that sometimes there's fish in platform 1 all the way up north, and there's some down south as well. I've seen it that way. I've seen it again be very weird, like they don't even get on beds till late March, April, because we had a long, cold winter. When I was first here in March 2014, we had a huge, heavy, cold winter. Ice storms. What determined when then? Well, it still was water temperatures, but there's something more important that I want to express now. It'd be very hard to teach, I think. But I want to explain, first of all, how the fish come in with the moon cycles, both the full and the new. I want you to think of it as the 7 days coming to the full moon, the 7 days before it, the 7 days before the new moon. All right? Again, by experience, by being on the water 250 days a year for the last, amount of time, I really witnessed this. You see the wave of fish start to come in with the moon. So when we're day 7 away from the full moon, day 6 away from the full moon, day 5 away from the full moon, I see these fish progressing, coming into the shallow waters. Okay, I see by day 4, day 3, day 2, there's males dug, females are looking. By the time you get to that moon, the female's usually dumping those eggs, and the spawn has happened. So in essence, they spawn on the moon, both full and new. Not all of them. Remember what I said, this is not 100%, but it's just your majority. There'll be fish during the mid of it. There'll be fish on the down cycle. So you got 7 days coming to a full moon and then 7 days going away from it. I generally, in most lakes, especially western lakes, I see it taper. So what I'm expressing, I see as a moon phase comes, full or new, I see it get better and better and better. More and more fish come, get on beds, lock on beds, spawn, and as it fades away, it gets less and less and less. And left behind are the males to guard. So that's the first thing. The moon phases, both full and new. But something very unique, even more important, and that is the solstice and the equinox. The solstice, first of all, the winter solstice, is the shortest day of the year. This year, it was December 19th. As of December 20th, the days are beginning to grow longer. It starts very slowly, but as we progress and get more into January and February, or even the first week of March, for example, in 1 week, we grew 40 minutes. Okay. At first, it's less than 30 seconds a day. But from the day of solstice, as an outdoorsman, I can tell you that that's not spring, but it's kind of like day one of spring. The days are growing longer. We've hit the bottom, and we are now starting to grow. Days growing longer. Well, I'm sharing this with you because it's a huge cue to Mother Nature. All things, including plants. I have watched it here. I've watched it on the West Coast. That when that begins to turn, things try and grow. We're still cold. We're still in winter. We're still going to have freezes. I've seen it here where we had a very mild winter and some of the trees started blooming and then the blooms got frozen. So you can have abnormal weather. We're still in winter. But the solstice is the bottom, the shortest day of the year. From that day point, we start growing. Well, what's next is the equinox. The equinox is when it's equal 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of night. Okay? My theory, what I've witnessed happen, is the first wave of fish is in and spawning by the equinox. Okay? The equinox this year was March 10th, and the pros were fishing beginning March 12th or the 13th. Perfect timing. Many of these pros know this stuff that I'm teaching you right now. Many of them look ahead. They make predictions of these waves of fish coming and going. Now keep in mind, these waves coming and going are for spawning. Later, fish move with the moon more on the major and minor for feeding. We're just talking about progressions to come in and spawn, etc. So the wind is really unique. It's generally in early spring. It lasts for about 2 good months. You're going to have a full moon, a new moon, a full moon, a new moon, and maybe even a little more. So 2 full months, 2.5 months worth of fish spawning. We've had our first wave March, the second weekend of March, the full moon of March. I'm assuming we'll still have fish on beds at the end of April, even into the beginning of May. In fact, I know our bigger waves come later. Ecologists say this: you have 80% of the fish in the lake that spawn. Not all 100% spawn. Of that 80%, you'll have a couple of small waves early, 10%. A lot of times your most biggest and more mature fish. Then you'll have a couple of your middle 2 or 3 waves that are a bigger source, 35, 40% of the fish. Big waves, main lake, more fish. Think of it that way. Up in the northern end, there's only a certain amount of fish. The main lake, more fish. The basin, more volume of fish, and so on. So that's the wind. Moon phases are huge. I really use them. You should use them too. What I have seen 100% is the female, by the end of the full moon, is done and gone. She's dumped her eggs and she's gone. It's just the way it goes. I occasionally have seen some females in between those phases, but it's most of the time the moon. All right. Again, also another little thing. Sometimes in the fall, again, you can see a bed or two. If we have a real mild fall that doesn't happen fast and doesn't get too cold too fast and kind of cools, trends, and stalls, even in Arizona, I've seen be a second spawn. Down south, Florida, they spawn twice a year. These fish are sunfish. Bass are a sunfish. They'll spawn over and over and over again if you keep the water temperature in that parameter. All you have to do is just trick the body just a little bit, warm it up, cool it back down, put it back into them, and you continually can make this fish over and over again spawn. If man puts them in a cage, in a tank, he could manipulate them, and they wouldn't have to have the solstice and the moon and all this stuff. Man could do that with lights, etc. Okay, where? All right, what location should you expect to find these bedfish or these spawning grounds? Man, that's pretty simple, honestly. In most of these shallow reservoirs, it's your shallow backwaters. It's the shallow flats. It's the shallow coves and the pockets. Most of the time you want to look for like a drain or a creek that leads to those places. The more defined the creek, the more defined it connects to the main lake or bigger, deeper water, the better the source of fish that probably comes to spawn in that area. So when you're looking at a source of fish, sometimes a small drain may only have a small source of fish, whereas a feeder creek may have a much bigger source that goes over a bigger area of flats. But generally it's flats, coves, pockets, etc. You're looking for areas of a semi-soft, semi-hard bottom that the fish can basically go in and fan and dig a nest. The male will dig a circular nest the size of a basketball hoop, if you will. And in essence, he starts the nest, the female comes in, and if she chooses him, she'll enlarge that to her liking. A little tip, one of the things like in a lot of these lakes to be certain that you're in bed areas is lily pads. Where the lily pads grow is where the bass have beds. That's the right bottom content. So if you're looking for dead lily pad stems in the wintertime, that's where you should expect to see those bass beds as well. A few other places, marinas, sheltered areas, submerged trees, bushes, laydowns, fall downs, docks, walkways. But again, it's all about the right water temperature and the right time on the moon phase, etc., that you're going to see these bigger females. Remember, it's short and sweet. And there are also some very odd places. I've been in some very big marinas, and I've seen bass spawning on the girders, the metal girders underwater 4, 5, 6 feet, crystal clear water lakes. I've seen them spawning on the trim tab flaps of really big houseboats. Very odd places. I've seen them in tire reefs. They make big tire reefs, tractor tire reefs. I've seen them spawn inside the tractor tire reefs. So sometimes they will be in very odd places as well. But typically hard bottom, semi-hard bottom, flats adjacent to your good creeks, okay? That's where you're going to find them. So real quick, we're going to go through how they actually spawn. Most of you already know this. This may or not be interesting to some of you. But basically, the male digs the nest first. The male moves into the shallow water, finds an area that he likes that's protected or sheltered, that has good UV light. He's going to dig the nest first. The male doesn't always follow the moon phase, all right? It's not quite, the male may move in and end up getting in an area and staying back in there for quite a while, a couple of moon phases. I would like to say the initial migration in the moon phase probably has something to do with it. I'm going to say more the water temperature. Water temperatures tend to be the critical part. But again, the timing, Mother Nature, I've caught them here with bloody tails, February 14th. One of the biggest females to record on Lake Fork, Valentine, February 14th, ready to spawn. So again, Mother Nature does vary just a little bit. But basically that male is going to go in first. There is a period of courting, all right? And so if you get an area flat that has a bunch of males move in, and just outside that flat on the breaks into the creek, you've got tree stumps in 6, 18, 12 feet of water. The males are up there in 2 feet of water. Those tree stumps are probably where the females stage one last time while they go visit these males in and out and begin their courting. They actually court. The Texas Parks and Wildlife have videos of it. It's awesome. Watch it. Go watch how they spawn, how they court together. They'll spend a day or 2 or 3 choosing a male or several males to disperse their eggs and ensure that their eggs have success. It's very unique. But it usually doesn't take much more than 2 or 3 days. Sometimes overnight. In Texas, some of these big females just dump their eggs and they're done. They're out. At this point, the female retreats to the deeper water. She's going out to recover. It won't be long before she returns back to the shallow waters and she starts to feed and gorge. She is hungry. She wants to recover weight now. I've seen in some cases they even come back and eat their own kind. But it's a predator and it's going to come back into the shallows and start to eat. Meanwhile, the male gets to guard. So the male stays with those eggs, sometimes 7, 10 days or so, even a little longer. It usually takes anywhere from 3 to 5 days, 7 or so max, for those eggs to hatch, depending on how much direct sunlight and what kind of weather they have immediately after being laid. If they get some direct sun and big Texas warm trend, they're probably hatching in 3 to 4 days, 5 days. If it's cold front a little or cool trending down, it may take as many as 5 to 7 days. But generally, the male's going to stay and guard, and he guards those eggs, and he guards that fry for about 7 to 10 days. Awesome to see that. He's very vulnerable at that time too. So the female, when she's coming up and in, is extremely vulnerable, like bucks, big bucks in rut. She's full of eggs that potentially could even be leaking. That ball of fry, usually within 3 months or so, will be fingerling size. By the end of the year, 8 to 10, 12 inches. They can grow really fast in Lake Fork. I know after that, a lot of the big fish here, once they've reached the 2 or 3 pound range, they really start to put on tremendous weight, a pound, pound and a half or more per year, because they typically get to grow all year here. But that's how they spawn. That'll happen in a period of probably 2 full months, most of March, most of April, a little bit of May. All right, let's get into some techniques. Generally, as a fishing guide, I don't like to bed fish. I'm not saying that I have any problems with it. We do it just a little bit. I don't have any problems with other guides or other people that do. In fact, the weekend guys, tournament fishermen, you should. It's great. It's fun. It's a great way to catch them. As a fishing guide that I do it I'm on the water 6 days a week. It just kind of burdens my shoulders that if I did that 6 days a week, I'm really beating my fish up. So it's a me thing. I don't feel that I'm judging anybody. Swing on those bed fish. They're fun. Last year, I really had a good shell bed bite that I really enjoyed. In fact, one day the shell bed bite was so solid. About 10 o'clock, we went to just look at some beds, and we saw some 5 and 6 pounders. We caught those 5 and 6 pounders, and my clients actually said after the third fish, "Can we go back to the shell bed fishing?" They enjoyed it equally or more. To each their own. As long as you're catching them, we're happy, right? But sight fishing, on the West Coast, I used to be very, very good at it. I can see them very deep, 18, 22 feet, 27 feet sometimes. Majority 8, 12, 16 feet, deeper than people are typically looking for bass. Clear water. Not quite as good at it over here. I'm learning they do it very, 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 very shallow. Your bigger females will be just out of sight in the shadows. So when you're sight fishing, I want to give you a few tips that I've learned here in Texas. First of all, obviously, good set of polarized glasses. All right, don't skimp on it. If you get the right pair of glasses, it'll make a big difference. All right, I choose the blue. The amber is probably better for sight fishing, and most glass companies will tell you the amber is what you want for sight fishing. For whatever reason, the blue and the colors of Lake Fork is what I like. And I kind of owe that to James Caldemeyer. I went through a couple different sets of glasses, could not find what I liked on Fork. I asked James Caldemeyer. He said I wanted the blue. I got the Costas with the blue, and I was very, very happy. So when you're sight fishing, you need a good pair of polarized glasses. Second, some possible elevation, a little extra elevation if you can. Don't get stupid and put a ladder or something like that. You're going to fall over and hurt yourself. You're going to bump a tree stump, and you're going to die or go to the hospital or drown. Oh gosh, I just don't want you to do it. But if you can get some elevation in a way, a good bass boat already has pretty good elevation. Maybe stand on a crate, I guess, but a little elevation does help. Normally, I would tell you to go very slow. You're going to go with the trolling motor and hunt the shallow water. I would normally tell you to go extremely slow. Um, but sometimes in fork, in the dirtier water, in order to see them, you need to make them move. So if you actually get that boat up in there and go a little faster and make the fish move, you can notate where it was and come back. That being said, rather than just finding a fish and trying to catch the fish and then having to find another, you're better off, if you can, there's not too much traffic, go through the whole area, waypoint a few fish, come back and go fish to fish to fish to fish. Sometimes you have to sit and find a male, sit back off that male and watch for the female. If you time it right, you find a bunch of males and you know that you're day 4 away from the full moon, day 3 away from the moon, day 2 away from the full moon. If anyone's getting this lesson, you'll understand where I'm leading you to. It's just like big buck hunting. I found some males on a Monday, 7 days from the moon, 6 days, 5 days. I know that female is probably right there behind them in those trees, in those stumps, in those first breaks. So now I can fish for her pretty confidently. Now I can fish for that pre-staged female while my males are waiting for her. As I get closer to the moon, I may start looking for her up on that bed, and she shows up 2 days or so before the moon. If you're with me, you're understanding the cyclic nature of how all this works, and it's pretty doggone awesome. But sight fishing can be really, really fun. A few cool tips. When I look at a bunch of males, if I have a male pointing to the shoreline, he's dug his nest, he's pointing to the shoreline, and I've watched him for 10 minutes and he never changes or anything, there's no female with him. If he's pointed out towards the deeper water, there's a good chance he's looking out because there's a female out there in that deeper water. Possibly she's just cruising the cove, waiting to pick which males she's going to come court and spawn with. But by watching those males, studying the males, similar to how I study my birds, I can make a decision possibly where some of those bigger females are staged just adjacent and behind, just off the next deep water, in the pre-staging locations that big females choose. All right? This is good stuff, folks. Sight fishing is really fun. Colors you should choose with your baits. Lots of guys love natural. If you're really, really good fisherman, you're probably going to want to go with natural. I always believe that if you feel the fish, you are asleep. You should be a line watcher. You should see something happen to your line long before you feel the fish. But in sight fishing, you want to see it. And there's many times where I've seen them take a bait, you don't feel nothing. They just take it. Your line pops, maybe your twist or whatever, but you don't feel it. So if you're looking for the bite, you're going to miss it. Okay? If they don't swim off with it, sometimes they can suck it in real quick and spit it right back out. So in essence, when you're sight fishing, you're looking, you want to be able to see. Most guys love to see. That's why they choose white or white and chartreuse, because it disappears when the bass sucks it in. So they're using a little white crawfish or a white bug of some type, and when the bass takes it, they see the white disappear. When you're throwing in a bunch of junk and dirty kind of semi-water and it's hard, there's glare and everything, that's I recommend it. If you can get them to take the colored baits, throw colored baits on them, it's to your advantage. Sometimes they'll get finicky and they won't take those colored baits, and you're going to have to throw a natural color in there, or natural crawfish color, natural brim color. Usually brim is a very, very territorial deal for a bass, and most of the time a brim colored something or other will get it done. A lizard, brim colored lizard tossed on a nest won't last very long. All right. Blind fishing the beds. That's sight fishing. Okay. A few things. Let's stay sight fishing. So you're looking for the fish. I can tell you one of the things, a lot of times in clear water, if you can see the fish, they can see you. So when you are sight fishing, the more distance you can keep once you've found a fish is really important. Aside from studying the bass and watching does a female come and visit him, you really need to keep some distance. The more distance, the better. Onward with a little more very important tips. Don't catch the male if you want the female. Most of the time, if you catch the male, the female leaves. You just won't catch her. You won't draw her up. You can keep messing with the male. He'll take the bait and spit it out. Take the bait and spit it out. Take the bait and spit it out. That draws her up. Let that just keep happening. It's frustrating. I've been in before a tournament where two of us are trying to get, we want the big female. We got a dinky little 12-inch male. We got a big 5-pound female. We want her. in Lake Mead, Lake Havasu, Lake Pleasant. And the partner has to get the male going while the other guy tries to have that brief moment with her, because the male won't let it happen. But you can't catch the male before you catch female. Never ever. That's a real cool tip. Never stick the male. If you do, just leave. Come back another time. But you really want to draw that female up, get her interest, get her mad. I really like it. She'll come in. Most of the time, she's going to be much bigger than the male. Males don't get bigger than about 6 pounds, the ecologists say. I've seen a few and fork be bigger than 6 pounds. But the female's going to dwarf him. In some cases, she could eat him. And so when he doesn't do his territorial job, if you keep messing with him, she's going to show up. And if she's a big girl, you all of a sudden see this big shadow show up. And she means business. When she comes up, she will kick him out the way if she has to get that bait of yours out the nest. She don't like it. All right? I'm going to end sight fishing. I'm going to blind fishing with, remember this. One last tip. These fish are there to spawn, not eat. They're not ever liking your bait. They do not eat your bait. Many times I've been doing this, and my clients will say, ooh, he likes it. He's going to it. He's going to it. He likes it. He likes it. No. He's territorial. She's territorial, and she doesn't like it. That's the object. Get them mad. When you see them posting on your bait, you're about to catch them. If they're leaving, not coming back, keep looking. If they are leaving and coming back, they're catchable. The minute you get them doing circles and posting on your bait, you're about to catch them. All right, fishing for them blind. Let's say you can't see them. Let's say it's dirty water and you know they're there. How about those deeper fish that you just can't see, period? There are deeper fish that we can't see. All right, to blind fish, man, go slow, 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 slow. All right? Pretend in your head those places that you would expect to see them if you could see them. Those are your targets. And get away from the goofy colored white stuff and chartreuse that you can see and stay very more natural. Crawfish colors, brim colors. Keep it simple. Go slow. Your target fishing, only pitch, but pitch very thoroughly and flip to all those places you would expect them to have a bed. And go slow, slow, slow. Watch for your line to move. You're not necessarily going to feel that bite. Your line will move. That's your blind fishing. And then staged, I've kind of already planted a few seeds on this staged. The staging areas are, and one of my favorite things to do on the West Coast because the water's so clear, would be go through bays as fast as I could and find a bay that had a bunch of males. And I wanted alpha males. I didn't want dinky males. I wanted an area that I went through 3 bays, and one bay had 7, the next bay had 4, and the other bay had 17. And I'm going to go to that bay that had more. I'm going to find those alpha males, the bigger, more dominant males, the one that picked the right spot that I know that female is more likely to come choose. I'm looking for that male that's looking out. Hopefully he's even moving back and forth. That means she's there. I just can't see her. But he's moving back and forth because she's pacing back and forth. So I just love to do that. And that's really the staged female. So those first deep water places and those tree stumps, very adjacent to where those males have dug the nest, is where you'll find and locate the possible females. I love throwing a jig on them, but that's the time to throw the big swim bait by those trees, throw a big spinner bait by those trees. That's when, in the old days, we just accidentally caught those big fish because we and they were fishing shallow. And now let's talk about handling these beautiful fish that are merely coming to the shallow water. They're easier for us to catch and be entertained at the mercy of their reproduction. Again, I'm not dogging it. I love to do it too. But let's just remember that. And let's take a real good thought and care when we do this. Number 1, in my opinion, no fish should be taking a boat ride. No big female deserves to take a boat ride when she's full of eggs and just came off the nest. You've ruined it. Get mad at me if you do. It's hard to not take a beautiful fish like that for a boat ride, to go to the marina or whatnot. If you're in a tournament, you're probably going to take them for a boat ride. I did it myself. But the leaking eggs, they shouldn't be going for a boat ride. If they came from a nest, they're at the nest because they're ready to spawn. They're probably leaking eggs. Maybe they put eggs in the nest, and you take the male off. Maybe they're guarding, and you've taken the male off. Now there's nothing guarding those eggs, and the carp and the brim eat those eggs. And again, it just should go for a boat ride. What about on our guide trips, man? We want to take pictures. McFarland wants to do a video with you. During this time, probably should take a lot more close concern to the fish. Make sure she's not leaking eggs. If you've taken her off a bed, make it as quick as possible. Don't waste time. Get her back in the water. Get her back to where she came from ASAP. The celebrating is wonderful, and you've just probably caught a big fish or a PB of your lifetime from a bed. Hard to not be excited. Adrenaline's flying, but take care of the fish and get her back on that nest so she can lay those eggs. It's very important. Texas Parks and Wildlife does an awesome job restocking and adding fish to our lakes, but there's nothing better than natural selection. Born natural to its own lake, the survival rate is much, much higher. So no more boat rides. You catch those big females, take a quick pick, put her back. All right? Guys, pretty much that's going to conclude now the spawn lesson, the spawn topic. If you have any questions, man, please feel free to drop comments below. Man, don't forget to hit the like button. I thank you so much for watching, for subscribing. Don't forget about my couple of channels. My Instagram is The Lake Fork Guide. My personal Facebook, Mike McFarland, and then the business Facebook, which is Lake Fork Adventures Guide Service. Please go subscribe or hit like on those. Again, I appreciate you. I love you. I'm Mike McFarland, the Lake Fork Guide, your host of the Daily Rundown, McFarland's Corner, and I'm wishing you all the very, very best fishing.